From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every podcast. This is Andre Johnson.
Junior.
Do not forget the juniors. Very important to remember the JR at the end of the name. Before we get into today's content, be sure to like, share, rate, review if you are watching us on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. A lot of you have. Get the bell notification when we drop that fire content. And also, hello to the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Glad you have found us here. It is Wednesday. We're going to start with a little PSA because the setting for the podcast that you've grown to love with the beautiful brick and the shelving and the coffee table and microphones, it's going to have a different look here pretty soon. Fox 8, we're currently in what's going to become the old Fox 8 building. We are moving to the new Fox 8 building. You've probably seen it if you've driven into the city, the big old sign that says Fox 8, because you drive right past it, you see the new 504 Golf. We're going to be moving into that facility very, very, very soon. So our days in this studio are numbered, but a new studio is certainly on the way. So I just want to get that out there to the audience. I know you've been asking, because a lot of people have been asking me when we move into that new building, because they see that big old Fox 8 sign right across from the Superdome. And that's the latest update that we have. All right, Wednesday, City of New Orleans. We're going to get to what we wanted to get to on Monday, but first things first, how you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. You know, a little behind the scenes. We were actually at that new building today doing a few, run-throughs and, rehearsals to, get the lighting and the spots right. We saw what'll be our podcast set, for the foreseeable future. So a lot of big changes coming to the podcast, fun changes. We'll miss the good old brick and our little table here. So we won't be able to knock on wood anymore, so we're going to have to find some wood somewhere in the new set. But, hey, it's a big move, and we're excited for it.
So we're going to go from this studio to a temporary studio as our permanent podcast studio continues to be built. Look, it's a huge structure that they've built and remodeled. So we're getting in, but not everything is fully complete yet. So that will be the I guess within the next couple of months once moving in. So you'll see it. You'll still have the content. We'll still be talking Saints. Still be dropping that fire content, no doubt about it. All right, big picture, pretty obvious today. This was the way we wanted to go Monday, but we only have a half hour, and Derek Carr talked. So we had to talk about that. Yeah. And judging by the response, y'all wanted us to talk about it because there was quite a bit of messages left and comments left on that page from the Derek Carr church service. Moving on from that, we're going to talk about the 2025 Saints draft class. It was a good one, a fun one, and a big one. That's what we're going to go with the big picture here today.
It was a big one. The Saints had 9 picks. They started off with offensive tackle Kelvin Banks. But before we go pick by pick, I think we should start off by giving our draft grades for what you view the class as overall.
I gave it a solid B+. I looked at it. I thought day 3 was a home run. I thought day 3 they knocked it out of the park. And when you have that kind of production on day 3 of a draft, I think it brings the grade of the class up. I think you're going to have at least half of these guys contribute right away, if not start. Hopefully a few of those guys are not just contributing, but contributing in a positive way to help them win games. And I think this is the type of class felt like kind of an infrastructure class. Like you're doing a lot of stuff because you had a lot of holes to fill. And I love that they went in with 9, they came out with 9. Because we said on this podcast, they don't just need a good class, they need a big class. We discussed on this podcast in a 5-year stretch how far behind they are from 2020 to 2024, their NFC South counterparts, a whole draft class behind. Now they're slowly starting to make up ground. They didn't admit to that in the post-game or the post-draft press conferences, but I bet that was on their mind, Andre.
Definitely. They kept all 9 of their picks, and we talked on a previous podcast about how they were pretty much a year behind the rest of the NFC South when it comes to quantity of draft picks. And so grade-wise, I went back and forth. If you go off of the first 2 picks, I probably give that about a C-. You guys have heard what I thought about the first 2 picks on this podcast. But if you go off of rounds 3 through 7, I give it an A. I think they knocked rounds 3 through 7 out of the park. So you average all of that out, and I'm going to average that out to a B. If rounds 1 and 2 went a little differently for me, it probably would have been an A+ or an A draft grade. If Tyler Shuck pans out to be what the Saints believe he is, that's an easy A+. I think they could have drafted a playmaker wide receiver. They had a lot of big body receivers in the draft that the Saints passed on. I think they could have gone a different direction with the first pick, but we'll get to that eventually. But overall, I think they did a good job filling those needs, and they had plenty of needs, but especially in rounds 3 through 7, they did a great job filling
It was
them.
the perfect year for a big draft class because you had so many holes, and there's no well, they didn't need that at any point throughout the selection. So I think all in all, it was a really good draft. So we're gonna go one by one here, just give us our thoughts, and just see how we, view these players, if they contribute right away, and how they're gonna contribute, and how long we think they're going to last here with the Saints. So where are we going to start?
We're going to start with Kelvin Banks Jr., the offensive tackle out of Texas, the first-round draft pick for the Saints.
Yeah, we went over this the night of the draft. we were on late the night of the draft, the first-round pick, but that was a busy night.
Yeah.
Busy night. So, look, the board was beautiful for the Saints. It set up perfectly. I mean, me personally, my two favorite players in the class were still available. I thought Jaylen Walker and Taiwan would both be gone by the time the 9th pick overall rolled around. They were both available. They had two offensive linemen, two tackles off the board, and Will Campbell and Armand Membu. Kelvin Banks Jr. Was the next tackle up off the board. And they went ahead and did what they do, which is invest in the offensive line of scrimmage. It should be noted that other than Trevor Penning, they have mostly hit on their offensive linemen that they've invested in. Haven't always hit on the defensive linemen they've invested in. But the point is, they always invest. That's one philosophy of Jeff Ireland and one philosophy of Kellen Moore that merged. And obviously, they went with the Trenchman and Kelvin Banks Jr. The question is, how soon does he get on the field? I don't think there's any. Let me say that's a question, but it's an easy answer. It's right away. Kelvin Banks Jr. is going to be a starter this year. He better be a starter this year. He's going to be one of the 5. Where does he end up? Left tackle, left guard, right tackle. Me personally, right now, I see him as the left tackle, Taliese Fuaga as the right tackle. Trevor Penning becomes your 6th man. And one thing I haven't seen a lot of is I know it would be disappointing to not have Trevor Penning as one of your top 5. However, him as your 6th, to me, bolsters the depth of the offensive line, which is something they clearly were intentional about in free agency and obviously in the draft. So to me, Kelvin Banks Jr., safe pick, steady pick, solid pick, meat and potatoes type of pick. But the bottom line is they want him to be the guy, the anchor for the offensive line for the next decade.
I like the player. I really like the player. My feelings about the pick is not based off of Kelvin Banks. It's really based off the rest of the draft board and who was available at the time. And you mentioned it, Jaylen Walker. Cam Jordan. Why has Cam Jordan been playing so consistently and getting so many snaps so consistently? Number one, he's arguably the greatest defender in Saints history. But number two, the Saints haven't been able to find a premier pass rusher that has stuck for a long time, since Trey Hendrickson, really, who we know what happened with Trey Hendrickson. Isaiah Foskey hasn't panned out. Marcus Davenport didn't pan out. Peyton Turner didn't pan out. So you look at that defensive end position, and I'm looking at a guy like Jaylen Walker, who I was really high on. If you pick Jaylen Walker with that pick, that's probably an A for me. As the draft class as a whole, he's one of the best pass rushers and even a run disruptor in the draft. I would have loved to see them pick a Jaylen Walker with that pick. You mentioned Ty Warren was there. Saints have been looking for the answer at tight end since Jimmy Graham. So, Ty Warren, or even if your guy was Colston Loveland, I would have understood the tight end pick. And I said the night of the draft, I felt like the Saints offensive line is stable. That's not me saying they have an elite offensive line by any means, but you've got a starter at left tackle. You've got a battle going at left guard. You've got a starter at center. You've got a starter at right guard. You've been bolstering the depth of the offensive line throughout the offseason. And Trevor Penning, for the first time in his career last year, we did not talk about Trevor Penning being a problem.
It's a good thing.
Is he an elite tackle yet?
No.
Not by any means, but he took a step forward last year. Is he as reliable as Kelvin Banks Jr.? I guess we'll find out when we get to camp. He better not be, because if you draft Kelvin Banks Jr. in the first round and he can't win the starting spot, then people are going to start whispering about maybe other things you could have done with that pick. But I think Trevor Penning took a step forward last year. I wasn't opposed to letting him start at right tackle this year and maybe addressing that later on. But Kelvin Banks is a good player. He was one of the best, if not the best tackles in the NCAA last year. I think they could have gone with a better fit considering what was at the board, but hey, they like Kelvin Banks and they went and got him.
So there it is. It's what they do.
It's what they do. Yeah.
But one thing they do not do is draft quarterbacks high until this year. So that's what we're going next.
Yep. Pick number 2 out of Louisville, Tyler Shuck.
6'5", 225 pounds. We've done a lot on him since he has been drafted. I told y'all they were high on him. I told you. I'm a little bit mad at myself that I didn't catch on to him until the Senior Bowl. I don't really remember. I remember watching one Louisville game last year. It was Louisville-Miami because it was kind of a shootout. I'm a little mad at myself, but his name really popped on the Senior Bowl, and he spoke about that. I asked him about it after the press conference or after he was drafted. He said that was like his Super Bowl because that was his chance to really make an impression, and an impression he did. I was in the sports office yesterday. You and Madeline and your desks were sitting behind me. How many times did you hear me say, ooh?
About 17.
Wow. Oh, wow. There are some legitimate wow throws on his tape. Legitimate. I'm not talking about good, great. I'm talking about wow, elite. How did he make that throw? That Notre Dame game, there were 4 huge drops that could have been massive plays. One ended up an interception. One would have been like a 60-yard catch. One would have been a touchdown. I mean, there were some throws in that game. Miami game the same way. So, Tyler Shuck is not a perfect prospect. There were no perfect prospects at quarterback outside of first round, obviously, outside of Cam Ward, based off what the NFL did. But Tyler Shuck is a guy that they banked on the elite traits. Now, he's available at 40 because the down-to-down efficiency is not there. Some of that is a product of not being able to finish the season until last year. Some of that is a product of the injury. Some of that is a product of, look, dude, you got to get better at certain things. The biggest thing I see, you'll hear this a lot, it's pressure, blitzing in his face. He's got to navigate the pocket a little bit better where you can kind of slide, step up, and climb through as opposed to kind of fading a little bit to your left and then trying to make a throw. Now, in saying that, he's as natural as I've ever seen a right-handed quarterback throwing on the run to his left. The arm angles, all the stuff. So, all in all, the Saints picking him at 40, they're not saying he's our next franchise quarterback, but they are saying we think he can be a starter for us. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen with Tyler Shuck this year.
Yeah, I'm not even going to get into the red flags. We've talked about that on the last podcast. I will give the Saints credit for this. Quarterback going into the draft was by far their biggest need. Mm-hmm. They needed a quarterback, they wanted a quarterback, and they went and got the guy who they believed in. We can argue all day on if he's the right guy. Some people may have, I'm one of them, like Shador. Maybe others like Milroe. Maybe people thought Ewers shouldn't have fallen as far as they did. Maybe there were some who think we should have traded up for Jackson Dart. You can argue over who the quarterback could have been all day. And somebody's going to be right because that's how these arguments work. But the Saints needed a quarterback. They did extensive research at the quarterback position with their head coach, who was a former quarterback, deeply involved in the process. And this is the guy they landed at. This is the guy that they wanted, and they went and got him. And they didn't have to give up any draft capital or trade, up, back, anything to go get him. They sat at 40, they waited for their guy, and they picked him. If he pans out, the Saints look like geniuses. This is automatically a home run draft class if Tyler Shuck is a guy who can start for you for 8 to 10 years. And if he doesn't pan out, like you said, he was drafted in the second round. It's not like he was, you draft a guy in the first round, there are some rare exceptions like a Josh Rosen or somebody like
Trey
that.
Lance type,
Yeah, who gets replaced after a year. But you draft somebody in the first round, typically you got to stick it out with him, good or bad. If Shuck doesn't play well and you're at a top 3, top 5 pick next year, you're looking, hey, Doug Nussmeier, your son want to come to New Orleans?
Right.
So you've got options. So I give the Saints credit for at least addressing their biggest need at quarterback.
All right, we'll try to speed this up a little bit because we're already
we are.
We're already past the halfway
in.
point, and we got 7 more picks to go. All right,
Let's
what's next?
Go Jonas Sanker, the safety.
No, we skipped one.
Oh yeah, Vernon Broughton. Excuse me, the defensive tackle.
Defensive tackle, 6'5", 311 pounds. This is another Brandon Staley. I got to get guys that fit my system. There is position flexibility. There's nose tackle, but people have to realize when you talk about a 3-4, okay, and you're in a nickel set, which is most of them, you'll have a defensive end on one side, a nose tackle right over the center or shade of the center. Then you'll have another player between the stand-up edge. Okay, that player is technically a defensive end. Okay, even though the stand-up edge is on the end. So when they say position flexibility, D tackle to defensive end, that's what they mean. He can play nose tackle over the center, or he can play in between the defensive tackle and the edge pass rusher. So I think this is a Brandon Staley pick. He likes to fit. Coached by Bo Davis. A lot of his guys have gotten drafted over the years from Texas and obviously LSU. So another meat and potatoes selection. I like it.
Is a big boy, and he's going to a team that was 31st last year in rush defense, and they've been bottom 10 in rush defense for a long time. So getting a big guy in the middle of that defense is never a bad thing if you're the New Orleans Saints. So this was the first pick that I was like, okay, there it is. Mm-hmm. There we go. Now we're filling needs with some good players.
What's next?
Jonas Sanker, the safety.
I wasn't as familiar with him, so I went back and watched some more of his stuff. Tackler. He's a guy who's going to play down in the box a lot. He did play some deep half at times. He did play some off the ball at times, but a lot of times they would use him as the drop down guy to play the hook curl or rob down to the curl flat. But he's a guy, see ball, get ball. He's very good against the run, a very short tackler. And what I love about him, I don't think he starts. He might get in on a few rotation because you got Tyron and you got obviously Jordan Reed. But I love how relentless he is, both on defense and on special teams. He's got a blocked field goal. He's running down punts. This is a guy that I think it's a really good middle round selection because he's going to embrace special teams. And he's going to – look, I think the Saints have sent the message. We are going to get better at stopping the run based off of what you got from Reed, what you got from now it's Sanker with Devon Godshaw, with Broughton. So another quality selection in round 3.
Yeah, I mean, Tyron's not going to play forever. I'm not going to put a number on it, but I know he's definitely closer to the end than he is the beginning. So bringing another young safety in that could potentially take his spot one day is a good decision. And it goes back to what Dennis Allen said, I believe it was last offseason when y'all were in California, and he said, I'm waiting for a guy to take that safety job. And nobody really did. None of the safeties on the roster really set themselves above and beyond any of their, teammates. So having another guy in that room who's a high motor guy and a big playmaker, I think that's a good pick for the Saints as well.
Really good pick. Well, and that concludes the first 2 days, and that was a good group through 2 days. But then day 3 comes around, and I thought day 3 really was the icing on the cake. Yeah,
the next guy, first pick of day 3, a linebacker with maybe the most famous Instagram caption recently, Danny Stzman, the linebacker from Oklahoma.
Total football guy. Total football guy. I think he's going to connect in the locker room. I think he's another sideline-to-sideline tackling machine, relentless, almost like you got to pull it back a little bit. Like, yo, dude, it's practice. We got to chill out a little bit. We can't be injuring our own guys. So you love the heart. You love the fire. You love clearly he loves football. I caught his interview. He was upset that no one in Florida recruited him, even though that's where he grew up. He ended up at Oklahoma, stayed there. A guy that can tackle, got much better in the coverage part of the game. But again, they're telling you this stuff. We are going to get better at stopping the run. And this is a day 3 guy that's not going to start because you got Werner and you got Demario Davis, but he gives you some flexibility, and he gives you, I guarantee you, a guy like that's going to do whatever he's asked to do on the football field, so he'll give you some special teams. So I think he's going to get on the field in certain packages, and I think this is another really good way to start day 3.
I think he fits the mold of what the Saints want, and he's
He's huge, by the way. He's
exactly.
like 6'4".
And he needs to become DeMario Davis's best friend. He can learn so much from somebody who plays like DeMario Davis, and that's the importance of having older players and vets in the locker room. I think him under DeMario Davis, in about 2-3 years, he should be in a position where he can start for this team.
He might be the guy. All right. Was it another 4th-round pick? Yes, it was a second 4th-round pick.
Quincy Riley. The Saints finally addressed their cornerback need.
Might
Louisville.
be the pick of day 3, if you're asking if I'm being honest, because they had such a huge need at corner, and I was getting nervous at this point that some of the corners are going to come off. It wasn't a insanely deep class when it came to cornerbacks, but there were some guys that the Saints could have pulled the trigger on. They ended up doing with Quincy Riley. I think this is one where the grade the Saints had for him was so much better than where he was actually selected, 131 overall. I think this is probably a guy somewhere in the 80s or 90s when it comes to if you were just grading him as a prospect. Got versatility, can play outside, can play inside. 15 career interceptions. I know he played early in his career at
Louisville.
No. He was before that.
Well, I don't know.
Then transferred to Louisville. I think this guy right here is your starting nickel right here. I think he's your day 1 starting slot corner over Isaiah Yadam. Alante Taylor wants to play on the outside. He's been very clear about that. This is a huge need. I still think they're going to sign a veteran, but I think Quincy Riley will have every opportunity to start right away for the Saints.
Right, and corner was kind of that spot you were looking. Obviously, at 9, you were kind of thinking maybe Will Johnson will be the guy. Then later in the draft, it comes out that Will Johnson was dealing with an injury, so he started falling. You thought maybe the Saints might take a chance in round 2 and draft him, but they went quarterback instead. But you knew eventually they had to go with the cornerback. Quincy Riley is a playmaker, and he's a guy with the versatility. He's a guy who you can put in the slot. And like you said, I think he does have a good chance to start number 1 overall, or day 1 overall. And I think that's kind of the theme with this draft class. There's a lot of players that the Saints picked who can realistically line up day 1 as starters, and Quincy Riley is one of them.
Yeah, look, if you're going to do that, you basically want to – you're saying you're okay with rookie mistakes. And honestly, I am too. This year, I'm fine with that this year. So that's it for round 4. No round 5. What's round 6?
Devin Neil, the running back from Kansas, 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons.
Well, I you know how I felt about Kansas running backs. The Kansas State running back was the guy I had on my mock, DJ Giddens. He was in my top 5 all draft team. I loved him. But I do like Devin Neil a lot. He doesn't have the top-end speed as some other guys, but he's highly productive. 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons, back-to-back 16 touchdown seasons. He doesn't have to come in and be the guy. They still have Alvin. But Alvin needs someone to help him. He just cannot do it all on his own. Someone has to emerge as the number 2 back. Kendre Miller has been just sort of fading a little bit. He's just never healthy enough to go. This is a new regime. This is a guy they picked. Another one, you just kind of get the feeling that the grade was higher than where he was actually selected. So I don't see how you can gripe with this one. 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons, highly productive player, position of need. I think he can come in right away and give you 100 carries this season, 400 or 500 yards, whatever it is, and can be an asset for the Saints offense.
Yeah, in both the running game and the passing game, I think he can make an impact in both of them. And that running back 2 position is a position that the Saints have needed because Jamal Williams, when he came over from Detroit, there were a lot of high expectations, and he never truly was able to live up to them. Kendre Miller hasn't been able to live up to his potential because he hasn't been healthy on the field to do so. So to bring in a Devin Neil, to learn behind Alvin Kamara, once again, the veteran presence of an AK, that's so important in any sport, but especially in an NFL locker room. I'm rocking with Devin Neil. I like that pick a lot.
I like it. All right, now on to 7th round where they had 2 selections.
We're going to go with the first pick was tight end Maliki Mataveo. Yep. Did I get that right?
That sounds right.
There we go.
UCLA tight end. Look, I think he's going to be an inline guy. I think this is going to be a blocking tight end type player. Oops, I dropped my phone here. I think he's going to be an inline player. I think he's going to be a guy that will have a chance to make the roster. He can catch the ball. In fact, last year, I think he had over 30 receptions, if I'm not mistaken. So he's not just a stiff that can only block and only run route. I saw him running sort of double move out and ups. I saw him running kind of sail routes. But a lot of times it's usually within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, which is what you normally get from an inline blocker, inline blocking type tight end. And if you're Kellen Moore, you're going to have different packages, different personnel groupings with 12, 13 personnel, where you're going to have multiple tight ends on the field. I don't think he starts. I think he's got a shot to make the team. I think he's got to contribute on special teams. But again, this is decent value for a 7th-round pick.
Yeah, I mean, tight end was one of the positions that you need, and I don't know if Mataveo is going to be the answer at tight end, quote unquote, but it's some good depth at tight end, especially since the Saints to this moment still haven't, re-upped with Foster Moreau. So, I mean, behind Jawan Johnson, it's kind of a question mark. So bringing this guy in, especially not knowing what Taysom's deal is right now. So having this guy here is a big depth position at a position that's already weak for you.
Yeah,
but you don't really know who's
and just
behind
on a
Jawan.
side note, I want to see Dallin Holker grow a little bit. I was
Yes,
higher on
he
him
was
last year. It
big
felt like
last
he
year.
was going to be a guy. It just kept waiting, and it just never quite happened for him. So hopefully he takes a step this year. All right, what's next?
Up next is the defensive end, Fidil Diggs, the last pick of the draft for the New Orleans Saints.
Okay. Did you watch him? Did you watch any of his stuff?
I saw little clips of him.
Okay.
Yeah. I was actually pleasantly surprised.
Way more versatility than I was expecting. 6'4", 257 pounds, listed as an edge. So a little more prototype when it comes to that stand-up edge defender. Not quite as tall, not quite as heavy. Got a really good first step. Spent 4 years at Texas A&M and finished out his career at Syracuse. But what stood out, there's some versatility on that tape. There's sometimes he's standing up over the A-gap, second level, delay rushing. There's times he's lined up as the edge and he's dropping in that curl flat window in coverage. There's times he's going off the edge. He's stopping the run. He's running down plays. Got a motor. A lot of times he's kind of running up the backside of a play and there'd be a fumble or something. And he makes the fumble recovery. Pleasantly surprised with Fidil Diggs. Wasn't a whole lot on him. He ran a 4.57 if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yeah.
So this is a guy that's got some versatility. He's got some size. He's got some experience. I think this guy's got a great shot at making the team, Fidil Diggs.
Yeah, and I mean, that defensive line room is so deep really at every position. So having a guy with the versatility who can, like you said, drop back in the coverage if he needs to, rush if he needs to, who can do a lot of things. If you can do that, that's your way to make a team and maybe one day make an impact.
Very rangy. Just really felt like, I don't know, it just felt like he was the longest guy on the field when you watch him. He had a 5th-round grade on the website I saw. That was the NFL.com website. So, again, another value pick, another guy that's played a lot of college football. And if you look at his production, sack-wise, it's gotten better with each one. So, Fidil Diggs, fantastic pick, I think, for the Saints that has a shot at making the team. How much time we got left? Oh, my goodness.
10 seconds.
We got to get out of here. That's what a big class does. All right, for Andre Johnson Jr., I'm Sean Fazende. We'll catch you guys next time on Overtime.